Ritter to the end zone, looking for Pierce. Did he hang on? Yes. Touchdown. Made the back as I've been around. Here he goes again. Busts free. Jerome Ford down the sideline. Foot race. House call. Touchdown. 79 yards. Big one in the Peach Bowl. This is a big one too. And it's going to go all the way to the house on the first play from scrimmage.
Bearcat Blitz, taking you into the weekend here across the Believe Network. We are, of course, presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. I'm your host, Russ Heltman. He's my co-host, Neil Meyer. And as we record this episode today, exactly 2 weeks away from the Cincinnati Bearcats taking on the Nebraska Cornhuskers at a neutral site in Kansas City, Missouri, at Arrowhead Stadium. The line holding firm on FanDuel Sportsbook at 6.5 points. I've seen it move at other locations in the market. So check out FanDuel for their line right now at 6.5 points. Cincinnati is an underdog by 6.5 points right now, minus 105 on that line. And they are plus 190 to win the game outright with an over-under of 52.5 points on FanDuel Sportsbook, where they are a little less than a week away from their big NFL Futures Day going on Tuesday, August 26th. The futures are coming for Futures Day. It's just a blanket Futures Day for FanDuel. So make sure to check out FanDuel Sportsbook on Tuesday. We'll remind you once again in the next recording to check that out, and where they will have plenty of fun options for futures on the FanDuel Sportsbook board. FanDuel Sportsbook, great presenting sponsor of Bearcat Blitz, where we have some news to get to today. Multiple news items since the last recording we did on the feed. A opening game for the Cincinnati Bearcats basketball team has been confirmed. Football is adding a non-conference battle in 2028. We have new info on injuries in football and basketball for the Big 12 Conference moving forward. And then we have the Athletics' Bruce Feldman clearly putting Scott Satterfield as one of just two coaches in the Big 12 on the hot seat. We'll get to all that on this episode of Bearcat Blitz, presented by FanDuel Sportsbook, after these messages. Launching the heart of the show right now on Bearcat Blitz. I'm your host, Russ Heltman, on Cincinnati Bearcats on SI. You can catch all my work and catch Neil Meyer's work at thefrontofficenews.com. And we start things off on this show presented by FanDuel Sportsbook with some fun news items. Neil, a home opener for the Cincinnati Bearcats to tip off the 2025-26 basketball season against Western Carolina. No formal announcement yet from Cincinnati on their non-conference schedule, but Western Carolina has essentially finalized their entire 25-26 slate, and they released that earlier this week on social media. Cincinnati taking on the Western Carolina Catamounts in the first week of November, Tuesday, November 3rd, Monday, November 3rd at Fifth Third Arena, and it's a fitting opponent for Cincinnati to take on, given the relationship with WCU head coach Andre Gray. He was an assistant under Wes Miller during his final few years at UNC Greensboro from 2018 to 2021. Neil, the non-conference schedule really just has roughly 3, maybe 4 more games to be finalized. It's really taken full shape as we get to the end of August here.
Yeah, absolutely, Russ. And you mentioned the home opener for Cincinnati. It's always pretty unique because this is something that Wes Miller, I feel like, has done in years past since coming to Cincinnati, is that he gives one of his former assistant coaches or one of his good friends an opportunity to come play a Power 4 matchup at Cincinnati. Yeah. I know he's done it in years past as well, but it's going to be great to see Coach Andre Gray come to Cincinnati and have a opportunity to go against his former assistant coach there in Wes Miller. So overall, there's a lot of history between those, but like you mentioned, still seems to be Cincinnati having maybe 2 or 3 spots left on that non-conference slate before the final announcement comes of what this whole conference slate or the whole 2025-2026 slate might look like. And I think we would expect to see that here within the next week and a half or 2 weeks or so.
Yeah, usually it seems like it's always like kind of like the first week of football season is when we start getting that full non-conference schedule for the Cincinnati Bearcats basketball squad. Dayton on the schedule this year. You got Louisville on the schedule this year. You got Xavier, of course, always on the schedule. It's going to be, I think, a very strong non-conference slate, a little bit stronger maybe in terms of overall talent that they're going to be facing compared to last season, get them even more sharpened ahead of the thing that's going to decide the fate of Wes Miller over the next couple seasons, if he gets that many seasons, his ability to win games in the Big 12. Can they get to 500 or better in the Big 12? You get the 500 or better in this conference, you're most likely going to be dancing with the other teams in the NCAA tournament. Speaking of dancing, they're probably going to be dancing the UC football team all over the Eastern Michigan Eagles when they welcome them to town in what is a by-game non-conference matchup in 2028. As reported by FBS Schedules, Kevin Kelly, he noted via a records request that Cincinnati has finalized a $1.1 million guarantee for Eastern Michigan as the Eagles come down to face Cincinnati on Saturday, September 16th. 2028. Cincinnati also scheduled to face Boise State in the non-conference action as well, Neil. So it seems like for the 2028 purposes of the schedule, all they really have to do is put one of the cupcake games in that middle slot of the non-conference, and that's your 3-game non-conference hierarchy with what is probably going to be the norm moving forward, Neil, of a semi-power conference kind of near middle of the pack power conference level group of 5 or group of 4 school in Boise State, or you get a middle of the pack power conference team like they're facing in Nebraska this year. And then you have the MAC team that you're going to face replacing the perennial MAC matchup against Miami that is no longer happening each year. And then you need the FCS school as well to fill out the non-conference slate. Looks like we're just looking for that FCS opponent, and the 2028 matchups will be pretty much finalized.
Yeah, absolutely, Russ. And it's a great thing that you bring this Eastern Michigan matchup up because you're a MAC guy in yourself, right? So you're looking at Cincinnati's schedule heading forward. You see Miami's been on the schedule last year. You look on the schedule this year, you see Bowling Green. You look down in years past, you see Eastern Michigan. Will this be the time where Cincinnati schedules an opponent you've been arguably waiting for the last
I
4 to 5 years in Ohio University? So at this trend, it's safe to say it could very well happen, right? Because you're looking at it, you have all your MAC schools basically there outside of your Kent State. You have your Ohio you still need, but there's a lot of good MAC schools out there that could be looking for a non-conference opponent moving forward. So it would be interesting to see if Scott Satterfield and the staff keeps that trend of, hey, let's add a MAC school each and every year instead of just playing Miami since they're going away from that rivalry every year. See if they get some of these other MAC schools in there. But overall, I'm excited, Russ. You mentioned the 2028. You have your Boise State. You have your Eastern Michigan. It's going to be interesting to see what the non-conference slate will be like moving forward for Cincinnati.
Yeah, and looking at the next few years of non-conference action, obviously you got Nebraska this year to kick off the season. And then you're taking on the Bowling Green Falcons at home Saturday, September 6th. You got Northwestern State FCS school on the 13th. 2026, you're kicking off the season against Boston College. That's a 2026 and 2027 non-conference opponent. Nippert Stadium matchup to start the season next year on Saturday, September 5th. Then you're welcoming Western Carolina on the football side of things on September 12th of next year. And then you're I believe the final scheduled matchup in the battle for the Victory Bell against Miami next year, Saturday, September 19th at Paul Brown Stadium, now Paycor Stadium in downtown Cincinnati. And then, Neil, 2027, I'm interested to see if they keep this the same. If they replace one of these FCS games, maybe they do. Maybe they add a game against a MAC opponent. Who knows? Or they could just stick with the two FCS matchups, which is pretty rare. I mean, I would be kind of shocked, Neil, if they stick with West Georgia and Missouri State as your first 2 opponents in 2027, and then they go to Boston College for the back half of the home and home series against Boston College on Saturday, September 18th, 2027. Two FCS schools in the first 2 weeks of the season, and then you're immediately jumping up to a power conference level and then Big 12 games the rest of the way. That seems like a little bit of a kind of abrupt jump, but they could. These schedules are made years in advance, so more likely than not, this is how it's going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. They are made years in advance, Russ, but for me personally, I hate the idea of two FCS schools,
Yeah, I don't like
especially
that.
playing in a great conference like the Big 12.
Especially
That is
going to, you have to go on the road after you play two FCS schools as well.
right. And that is a huge disadvantage for a team like Cincinnati, right? Yeah, you might be able to get two good wins to start the season, potentially 3-0 in non-conference slate, but then you head into conference play and you're like, oh shoot, this is a very good Big 12 team, especially if you start with a TCU, a Kansas State, or a Texas Tech, an Iowa State, whoever that might be. It's not going to be easy, especially going on the road to those places. I don't know if you saw the news, Russ, but Texas just banned the tortilla toss from what I was seeing on social media. So you won't have to deal with that on the road in the future, it looks like. So overall, but you don't want to go on the road to the Big 12 foes after playing two FCS schools in back-to-back weeks. Then you go to a Big 12 opponent on the road. That's just a horrible matchup in scheduling, if you ask me.
Yeah, two FCS schools and then going to Boston College. It's not seem very fun for the scheduling purposes of things there. But we'll see if that ends up holding true. It's still 2 years away, long time before we get to that point in the calendar. And speaking of Big 12 rules, like Neil just brought up with Texas Tech, Big 12 mandatory, making injury reports mandatory moving forward for men's and women's college basketball plus football as well. So how this is going to work essentially is teams will have to report their availabilities for their student athletes prior to the game. So according to a release by the Big 12, the policy will include updates in the days leading up to each game, as well as a final report 90 minutes prior to kickoff or tip-off. Big 12 football programs are required to submit daily reports beginning 3 days before each game. Men's and women's basketball teams will update their availability reports the night before each contest, and all reports will be housed exclusively at big12sports.com, and we'll have people covered with all that news, all that stuff. We'll be reporting on all that on the frontofficenews.com and Cincinnati Bearcats on SI. For football, student athletes have designations that range from available, probable, questionable, doubtful, all the way to out. And then basketball is going to have available, game time, decision, or out. So, Neil, in years past, injuries were just supremely murky. I mean, we wouldn't know the status of guys for weeks at a time, just in terms of whether they were definitively questionable, whether they were definitively out. It would be like a wait and see approach. Now there's no more gamesmanship to be had. And I think this is the way to do it, especially with the professionalization of these sports, the amount of money at stake in these sports, the amount of gambling at stake in these sports. It's a professional outlet, and we need to treat this like we do the professional leagues, which have mandatory injury reporting for all of that, keeping things above board reasoning.
Yeah, absolutely, Russ. And you mentioned me personally, I'm in favor of this ruling because you and I both know how tough it has been to report on injuries for multiple seasons on end, right? This is my sixth
Right. And
year
if you have
covering.
info, do you give it out? It's like you
Correct.
violating HIPAA. It's just cut and dry, right from the
This
Big
is
12.
this is my sixth year of covering football, right? And I swear every week we have had to ask a question, what is X, Y, and Z status heading forward? And you get the same answer. He'll be back out at practice. You only get 1 day open to practice. He might be out there, but they're not giving you much information. I know last year there was a game, TCU, where we didn't know Antoine Peak was even injured until before warm-ups when we were on the sideline and he was standing there out, not dressed. And I was like, oh, your leading safety's not playing today. That's a huge blow, right? So, I mean, overall, finding these injuries details, it's never the easiest because there's so many rules and gray areas and whatnot on how to word these and what you can and can report on. But for me personally, I like this. I really do because not only do you get it every day for football, 3 days heading up to it, you also get it 90 minutes before kickoff as well. So that
Yeah.
is huge compared to years past where 90 minutes before kickoff you're standing down there on the sideline with binoculars or your eyes and trying to see who's out there going through warm-ups. Like it makes it a lot easier for us to kind of do our job and for us to see what to kind of predict on the defensive side or the offensive side of who might be available and whatnot. But I'm all for it for the football. I like that it's 3 days early because football, you only get one media availability a week for us media members here at Cincinnati, and that's typically on a Tuesday. So a lot can change between a Tuesday to a Saturday to a
Yeah.
Friday, essentially. But compared to basketball, where we might be able to get 1 or 2 practices in a week, right? So you can see a lot more on the basketball side, and you'll have a better idea of who's going to be able to play on the basketball side. But compared to football, if you only get one media availability, a lot can happen in such a physical sport like football over a 3 day period.
It's great. It's just a great change and another way that college athletics is taking steps forward in the year 2025. One more item to get to on this episode of Bearcat Blitz, the hot seat. Whew, it's hot in Cincinnati. Is it hot for Scott Satterfield? One major college football insider seems to really think so. And we'll discuss all that after these messages on Bearcat Blitz, presented by FanDuel Sportsbook, where you can bet on the Bearcats right now to win the Big 12. Odds up at FanDuel Sportsbook, and Cincinnati sitting at right around, let's see what the odds are looking at here, 33-1, plus 3,300 on FanDuel Sportsbook to win the Big 12. Some of the lower odds on the board there compared to the rest of the conference members. Cincinnati only above Oklahoma State, UCF, West Virginia, Arizona on that odds board. Oklahoma State's at the bottom of the odds, and their coach is definitively still on the hot seat, and Mike Gundy. Scott Satterfield joined him, according to Bruce Feldman. We'll get to that in just a moment right here on Bearcat Blitz, presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Bringing the show to a close here on the Believe Network. I'm your host, Russ Heltman. He's my co-host, Neil Meyer. This is Bearcat Blitz. Touched on Cincinnati and Oklahoma State being closer to the bottom of the odds board for FanDuel Sportsbook's projections at the 2025 Big 12 champion. And Cincinnati's right there with Mike Gundy in terms of both having programs with coaches under fire. Scott Satterfield on the hot seat and Mike Gundy on the hot seat, according to Bruce Feldman. Quote, Satterfield, 8-16 overall and 4-14 in the Big 12. Getting bowl eligible would help a lot. The Cincy administration likes him. They want to keep him, but the fans want to see some tangible evidence that Satterfield can get it going. That's the prevailing sentiment, Neil. It's just like the graduation rates are great. The vibes around the program are great. Scott Satterfield, from all of our interactions with him, a great guy, jovial guy, really fun to cover, really acquiescent with the media. He's given us a lot of good exposure and good access that schools and programs around other power conferences don't necessarily offer to their media outlets. But you got to win. You got to get wins on the board at some point. Doesn't matter how good a guy you are. It doesn't matter how nice you are. Nice can only take you so far. And that's kind of the sentiment I'm getting from Bruce Feldman and just the inside talk that he had with the Cincinnati administration is the investment has been there. The IPF is there. They've had access to it all summer. The investment is there on the roster. It's time to get bowl eligible. Something that many people and many projections think will happen, including ESPN's Football Power Index, which has Cincinnati with a 66% chance to win 6 games and get back to bowl status after 2 years away from that structure under Scott Satterfield. He's on the hot seat, Neil, I would say, but I wouldn't say it's like scorching hot because of the other reasons that I just laid out. He's built up goodwill in basically all the ways you can, besides actually putting points on the board and putting up more points than your opponent.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you, Russ. Everyone kind of talks about, oh, well, he should have been on the hot seat a year ago, blah, blah, blah. I
Which is
have always
crazy.
stood,
Like, you're not, a school like Cincinnati, they're not firing coaches like
right.
that after 1 year. Like,
And I've
it's not
always
happening.
stood firm on the decision you have to give a coach 3 years, right? I mean, you look at what he came into Cincinnati with. You had a complete
Right.
roster turnover. I mean, there was guys fighting each other at practice, fighting each other in the locker room. You look at what this program is now, Russ, and I kid you not, we have interviewed probably 20, 25 players over the last 3 weeks throughout fall camp for Cincinnati, and each one has been yes, sir, no, sir. How are you? Like complete overhaul of not only personality, but you can see the kind of people that this staff and this group has brought in, and the talent is still there, right? So in year 3, this is what the roster was going to be look like. And I've talked to multiple sources within the football program, and they have said everything that I'm about to echo here, that this is what they expected year 3 to be like, right? You get guys like Dante Corleone, Gavin Gerhardt, Brendan Sorsby, Joe Royer all to return. Cincinnati has the pieces to kind of go out there and get bowl eligible, especially with the schedule they have. But for me personally, I don't think he's on the hot seat, right? Because you have to give him 3 years. They went, what was it, 3-9 the first year under Scott Satterfield. You go 5-2 to start a season last year, which arguably, yes, you look back, there was a lot of blunders. They should have been bowl eligible last season in year 2, but the way life goes, it didn't go that way, right? But in year 3, things are trending in the upward direction, especially with this coaching staff, this strength and conditioning staff. We have heard nothing but praise about this coaching staff, this strength staff, all throughout fall camp and this offseason. So overall, for me, I don't think he is on the hot seat because of all the stuff that we have been hearing. So
Well, if he goes
overall,
3, you think he'll be retained if he goes 3-9?
I think that's when the seat would get a little hotter, right? 3-9.
That's the point, Neil. It's like, I think that's the key delineation is if it's a disaster, I think he's going to be gone.
But for them,
if it's
for
5-7 again with a similar kind of structure, that's where it gets tough.
For them to go 3-9, so much disaster would have to happen, per se, right? Think about it.
Yeah.
With all the talent and stuff on this roster, going 3-9, something awful would have to happen. And I don't see that actually being a reality for Cincinnati this year. I expect this team to be sitting around 500, 7-5 at the least. And that's just from what I've been seeing through fall camp. We're on day 15 heading into tomorrow fall camp, and there has been something new to take away every day. And this team is going to make an impact this season. And I truly believe that this fall camp has been different from the last 2 years under Coach Satterfield. And you can see everybody bought in. The chemistry's together. And the thing is, Russ, I know you haven't seen the social media posts because you don't have Instagram or whatnot, but you look at what they just did the other day, right? Their annual cornhole tournament to end up fall camp. I don't know if you saw the pictures on Twitter yet, but look how
they were going
connected
hyped. It was fun.
Look how connected those guys were. That's something we haven't seen under Scott Satterfield yet. I mean, Samaj Jones got on the mic and performed. So who knows? We haven't seen that side of Samaj yet, but you also see Jack Dingle and George Leopold win a cornhole tournament against Jack Dingle's best friend. And I know I saw some interactions from Brady Lichtenberg, who was not very happy with how that outcome came. But overall, this group is a lot more close. The chemistry is there. And I think that chemistry is going to translate onto the field to where they put themselves in contention to be bowl eligible this season.
Yeah, C to me is more like warm, trending towards bubbling up more warmth. But it's not necessarily firmly hot in my eyes. Because if you go 6-6, he's going to be retained. And like you said, Neil, it would, like, for a 3-9 season to happen, to me, that would require multiple major injuries. And how are you going to lay that at the feet of Scott Satterfield if multiple major players suffer freak injuries? Like, that's not something that he can control.
Especially heading into fall camp right now, where you're about to finish up fall camp and there has been no injuries yet.
Right. There has been no, I mean, the only guy that of note that hasn't really done much this fall camp is Cam Rutherford. And that's about it. Everybody else has maybe had a little, if they've been dinged up, it's been a minor muscle thing here or there, miss a day here or there. But the major injuries, knock on wood, have been avoided by the Bearcats so far this summer. For Neil Meyer, I'm Russ Heltman. This has been Bearcat Blitz presented by the FanDuel Sportsbook. Have a great weekend, everybody. Talk to you again next week as we get inside of 2 weeks until kickoff of the 2025 UC football season. Enjoy.
6, Ritter to the end zone, looking for Pierce. Did he hang on? Yes. Touchdown. Back as I've been around. Here he goes again. Busts free. Jerome Ford down the sideline. Foot race.